basics of Cypress, what are the advantages, and how we install Cypress setup entirely, how we set up a set path for a Node.js, and how we run a test case in a Cypress. So we discussed few basic stuff in it. Now, what is Cypress or what are the advantages? Can we have some answers? Cypress advantage. So why there is already we have Selenium? Why people are moving towards Cypress? Or what is advantage? Or why it is little famous or becoming very famous? Can we have some answers quick? Able to recall?
It is a modern tool
Okay.
and it is fast to set up.
Yes, the answer is fast. It is fast to set up as well, fast to write a code as well, fast to run as well. Running, that is executing. So overall, your execution time is very less, and it runs on a browser. What is runs on a browser? So there is no dependency of a web driver. In Selenium, how we write a code? So we have Selenium setup. So on top of that, we need a web driver. So everything happens through this web driver on a browser. So anything you launch on a browser, first we need a web driver. So web driver is the middle, what we can say, API, which will do all those stuff. So what happens if there is a communication with the two things, like you started with Selenium, but Selenium will only work with WebDriver. So the browser execution, whatever code we write, those commands will be executed by WebDriver on a browser. So it becomes little slow because there is WebDriver dependency in the Selenium architecture. But in Cypress, we don't have such any dependency. Whatever we write, a code directly runs. So directly it runs the code on a browser. What does it mean? It runs directly on the browser because there is no WebDriver or any other middle application dependency or any other component dependency. So no other component dependency is making it faster, and it's easy to set up also. It's overall become um advantage. So the most or the biggest advantage is the architecture of Cypress, which is not depending on any other component. Cypress commands directly will run on a browser, which is why it is faster. It is, and our code will have better control on the execution. Now, whenever your Cypress code is executing on the browser, so now Cypress is executing directly on the browser. What it makes, the Cypress is executing, suppose you are launching this URL. So now it is, everything is in control of the Cypress, and your browser is handled with the Cypress and Node.js. So what happens whenever some elements are not available or some elements are available? So the actions will be performed. So there is no need to write a wait statements. Why wait statements are not required? Because browser, like Cypress, is sitting on a browser. Okay. And it is executing. So it knows when the particular element is available, when to click on it. It knows by default because it is running, executing on top of the browser. So it is faster also. It is better having control on the overall application when it is executing.
And
And we don't need to write.
Selenium is also running on the top of the browser, right?
No, not at all. Selenium is not running. Selenium is depending on WebDriver for everything. So in Selenium, the first statement we write, WebDriver driver equals to new Chrome driver. So now the Chrome driver will execute everything on a Chrome browser. So we need the browser drivers in order to run the commands on a particular browser. What is this WebDriver driver new Chrome driver? So this WebDriver component is handling everything. So now what we write, driver dot get, or you have different commands, driver dot find element. So every time the driver dependency is there, which is the Chrome driver is executing the statements on a Chrome browser. For a different browser, you have different driver. Okay. So this is how the architecture is. Yes, we will learn about it. Okay. If you have not learned about Selenium, we will see that. So there is a slight difference in the architecture. So Selenium always depends on a WebDriver. Okay. So directly Selenium cannot run the commands on the browser. It is not direct browser to Selenium communication that will happen. Always a intermediate is required, which is WebDriver. Okay, you can keep this in mind. Selenium commands may not be working directly on a browser, may not work at all. So you need always a WebDriver component, which is going to take Selenium commands, translate it and run on a browser. So it becomes a two-step. Whereas in Cypress, the Cypress commands are executing directly on the browser. So code has better control. The browser is in control of Cypress. Cypress will execute on top of a browser. So that is why it's a bit faster. Okay. So that is the biggest advantage. So biggest advantage is it's a architecture, and because of this architecture, there is no dependency on other components. Cypress commands will run on a browser directly. There are no wait statements written, or no need of writing the wait statement. So what are the wait statements? So in Selenium, we write wait statements. What are the wait statements? Implicit wait, explicit wait. Why we need a wait? When a browser, like you're launching a particular browser, you click on any element. It takes some time to load, 5 seconds or 3 seconds, right? So some 2-3 seconds the time it takes. So we have to write a wait statement. So our code should wait for that page to load. After that is loaded, then only we can click on. So if you click on this any of, okay, browser testing, so it took 2 seconds to load. After it is loaded, then only I can click on browser testing. Before this page is loaded, we cannot click. So we have to write some wait statements for that element to be available. Those wait statements are not required in Cypress. Okay. So we get this interview question, why Cypress? People will ask, why Cypress? Why? The advantages we have to explain. So these are the sum of advantages. Now what are the disadvantages? So what is advantage, disadvantage meaning is? Disadvantage is the flaws, like the maybe it has. So everything has advantage and disadvantage. So now I'm saying Cypress commands will directly run on a browser. It doesn't mean Cypress has all the advantages. Cypress also has some disadvantages. Okay. Cypress only supports only three browsers it supports. Okay. So it supports a Chrome browser, and it supports Edge. Okay. So we will see what are the browsers it supports. Testing, it only supports few. Okay. Where we have